Hello guys, in this video tutorial we are going to learn about authentication and authorization. Majority of the time the REST APIs that we deal with are provided with the authentication and authorization means so that we will be able to access those APIs. So let's get started and dive in deep. Oftentimes the terms authentication and authorization are used interchangeably, and hence it is important for us to take a brief overview of what authentication and authorization mean. Let us first begin with the authentication. Authentication is the process where we identify the person or the device. A common example in this regard will be the username and password with which we log into a website. When we enter the correct login information, what we do is that we let the website know, number one, that who we are, and number two, that it is actually us that is accessing the website. Basically, we end up validating to a system that it is being accessed by the right person. Speaking about authorization, authorization is the process to determine whether the authenticated user has the access to particular resources. It verifies your rights to grant you access to resources such as information, database, files, etc. Authorization usually comes after authentication. It confirms your privileges to perform a particular activity on the application or the system. In simple words, it basically means that you are giving a person some rights to do something or to access data in certain cases. Now that we have taken a brief overview of what authentication and authorization stand for, it's time to relate them to real world example to understand them better. So let's get started with it. Take an example of withdrawal of money from an ATM machine. When we approach the ATM machine, we swipe the card and we enter the secret code that is known just to us as an account holder. Once we have done that, the screen displays the account details, and then there are various functions that we as account holder can perform. Basically, the first step, that is swiping the card and entering the secret code, is a means of authentication, while the rest of the functions such as checking the account balance or withdrawal of money comes under the umbrella of authorization. That is, we as account holders are authorized to perform those particular functions. Having learned about authentication and authorization by means of an example of withdrawal of money from the ATM, now it's time to understand the differences between the two. And to do that, we will use the same example of withdrawal of money from the ATM. Speaking about authentication, what it does is that it confirms your identity to grant access to the system. Basically, when we are presenting the ATM card and the secret code to the ATM machine, we are establishing our identity to the machine. Speaking about authorization, what it does is that it determines whether you are authorized to access a part of the system. Basically, when you have presented the ATM card and the secret code, what it has done for you is that it has given you access to a part of a system, and that is nothing but the bank account in your case. In case of authentication, it determines whether user is what he or she claims to be. Essentially, what you are doing is that you are proving your identity. And when it comes to the fact that once you have proven your identity under authentication, the next step is that it determines what the user can or cannot access. Essentially, the account holder is able to access only the account of which the ATM card and the secret code is linked to. The account user is not able to access to any other person's account details, and that is about authorization. Authentication is the first step to access the system. When we presented the ATM card as well as the secret code, it was the first step to access the ATM machine. Authorization follows after successful authentication. Basically, once the authentication was done for the ATM machine, we were able to access the account and do various operations on it. And thus, authorization follows after successful authentication. To summarize, we begin with the block of authentication, where we answer the important question, who are you, and we prove it by means of the identity. Once the identity gets confirmed, what we essentially go on to do is to the next block, that is of authorization. Under the authorization, what we do is that we answer the important question, does this person have permission to access the requested resources? If the answer is positive to that particular question, then the user is permitted to access the resource. And this is the chain of authentication and authorization flow.